Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Leticia Estrada, and I'm the Graduate Programs Recruiter here at Loyola Marymount University. I'm joined here tonight by our special guests of the evening, Doctora Cynthia Alcantar and Doctora Dolores Delgado Bernal, who are the new doctoral program directors. I'm also joined tonight by the Assistant Director of the Doctoral Program here at LMU, Michaela Cooper. So we're very excited tonight to chat with you about our online doctoral program in educational leadership for social justice. So we really appreciate your time for taking the time to be here tonight. I'll start out with an overview of the program, just to give you some insight into the program, and then we'll have some time with our program co-directors to get started with a Q&A session with them, and so you can learn a little bit more about them. All right, so we always like to start off all our sessions by asking why choose LMU? We know that there are a lot of doctoral programs out there, and if you're here, you're doing your research to figure out if this is the right fit for you. We like to point out some of the things that make us stand out as an institution, and specifically in our program. One of those things is that we are one of the first programs to focus on social justice. We know that there are a couple other programs out there and more that have emerged recently, but we are one of the first and proud of that. This program is over 20 years old as well. We take an integrated approach to theory and practice, and we have leaders from all sectors within education who come from PK through 12, higher education, nonprofit, and community-based education as well. Over the last 20 years of the program, we've built up a robust network of superintendents, principals, policymakers, nonprofit, and community leaders. So you'll really find a strong network of community here at LMU. And you'll also have a community of support within the program. So in the program, there are some supportive structures that are embedded over the course of the 3 years in the program. One of those being the one-to-one dissertation chair-to-student ratio, in which you will also be put into dissertation research communities, which is a newer concept that has been integrated into the program, in which you will take a series of courses with about 7 other students who share the same chair as you, and we'll dive more into the DRCs, as we like to call them here at LMU. We love our acronyms as we continue moving forward with the presentation. We also love to have intimate class sizes, so you really get that faculty to student support, mentorship throughout the program, which is why we build our cohorts to about 18 to 24 students per cohort. And we also implement workshops, writing retreats, brown bag lectures, and professional development opportunities within the program as well. Any opportunity for you to share the research that you're doing, we encourage you to do so as well. You'll find a lot of mentorship to do that also within the program. And a lot of these are delivered in a bimodal fashion. So some of those are on campus, some of those are online via Zoom as well. All right. And then, as I mentioned, this is a fully online program. It takes 3 years to complete. It consists of 46 units, and every student who is admitted to the program is considered for a generous doctoral scholarship of up to $30,000. The program is designed for working professionals, so aside from the classes being fully online, they are delivered in evening times as well. And we encourage our students to share research internationally, whether that be through a poster board or presentation. There are opportunities to apply to do that, and sometimes funding for those as well. We do have a wonderful career and professional development team at LMU. Our office is available to assist for mock interviews, resume review, salary negotiation. You'll have a specific career counselor who is dedicated to the School of Education and specializes in education as well. Another great resource is our LMU Hannon Library. Well, you'll also have a dedicated librarian specifically for our doctoral students who are available via chat 24/7 to help you access over 53,000 journals and over 300 databases. We also start our program here in the spring, which at LMU is in January. So we're looking at January 13th, 2025, and the application deadline for this upcoming spring term would be September 10th, 2024. This is a look into some of the classes that you would be taking over the 3 years in the program. As you can see here, the first year is your leadership-heavy classes, so moral and ethical leadership, transformational leadership, leadership for social justice, and then some research-heavy classes as well. Your second year is dedicated to policy, management, and law classes. And your third year is pretty much solely dedicated to the dissertation writing process. And then we have graduation. All right. So with the deadline approaching quickly in September, we do look for students who have an undergraduate GPA of a 3.0 or higher and a graduate GPA of a 3.5 or higher. This doesn't mean that we don't encourage you to apply if you may not meet the exact benchmark that we have listed here, because we do take a holistic approach to our application review process. We encourage students to apply because we'll take all other aspects of the application into consideration as well. We also look for students who have experience in education or leadership for at least 2 years. And then within the online application, you'll find that we require a statement of purpose of 2 to 4 pages with the prompt included as well, stating why you would like to pursue the EDD, how the EDD fits into your career plans, why you're choosing LMU specifically, and then some areas of research interest. This doesn't mean that we expect you to have your dissertation topic already figured out. This is just to get a better sense of what you would like to explore, what you're passionate about, and also to see if we have some faculty members who share the same areas of passion. We also look for a current resume and 2 letters of recommendation. One of those letters can be from a current professor, a current employer, I'm sorry. And then the second can be from a professor or a former employer. And then we do require transcripts from all colleges or universities attended. Those can be sent either electronically or via mail to the graduate admissions office. And based on all of these components, candidates who are elected to move forward will be invited to a virtual interview. We do have to include this slide just to let our prospective students know that unfortunately, if your state is not currently listed on this list, that means that California does not currently have an agreement to deliver online education. We just want to throw that out there. But we do encourage you to continue to check in with us as this list changes throughout the years. Maybe next year it'll look a little different. All right. And then the funding of the degree. So as I mentioned before, every student who applies is automatically considered for a 30,000 doctoral scholarship. And you can see here the way we've broken it down over the course of the 3 years in the program. So the amount that would be due or that would be owed after the scholarship is applied already. Here are some additional scholarship resources. Within the School of Education, there are a couple different scholarships for Catholic school teachers, Catholic clergy members, private SOE scholarships as well. So definitely check those out. There's also a couple of different grants, depending on your profession, that you can research through the SOE website. We also have students who elect to pay the remainder of their tuition through a federal graduate loan. And while you're in school, you will receive in-school deferment. We've included our financial aid office contact information. They're available via email, phone, and they also do Zoom appointments. Here is the QR code, which will take you to our doctoral website, where you can learn more about the program and recap all the information I just covered. All right. Awesome. So now I would like to introduce or have our program co-directors introduce themselves and tell us how your academic and professional background and the path that led you to your current roles. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I'll start us off. Thank you all for joining us. We're really excited to be here with you, and thank you for joining us. I know it's summertime, and so you're spending some time doing this info session with us in the afternoon. So we appreciate your time and taking this time with us. So I want to start off by saying that both Dolores and I are fairly new to LMU. So we are not only new to this role, but also new to LMU. We're entering our third year, or 2.5 for Dolores, third year into mine. We come from various different institutions, and I'll share with you a little bit in this current role as co-directors. We started officially, I think it was June 1st. And so we're quickly getting we've been with the program for a while as faculty, but now it's a new type of role that we're in. So I am from Riverside. To share a little bit about who I am, I grew up, born and raised, families from Mexico, immigrated to Riverside. And so my path into higher education started at UC Riverside. I also took classes at Riverside City College, got my master's at Claremont Graduate University. Then my PhD actually started at NYU, then finished off at UCLA. And have been working in different sectors. I've worked in the K-12 sector, specifically working with kinder to 6th grade students, helping them with English and math, majority immigrant students. Also coached at the high school level for 8 years, track and field. And also worked at Mount St. Mary's College, Norco College with different college access programs, Claremont Graduate University. So I've gotten experience different types of higher education institutions. I started off my professorship role or teaching. I would start in higher ed at Pitzer College. Then I also worked at University of Nevada, Reno right before coming here, actually. So I'm really excited to be with you all now, working in this capacity with all of you. And I'll turn it over to my colleague and co-director, Dolores.
Hello. Thank you, Cindy. Again, thank you for being here. I will quickly tell you a little bit about myself and moving into this role as co-director with Cindy. I'm actually from the Midwest. I say I'm a Chicana from Kansas. I did my undergraduate in the Midwest and then my doctoral work at UCLA. And I worked in a Latino civil rights organization before going back to graduate school. I taught elementary school in Pasadena Unified. When I left graduate school, left UCLA, I went to the University of Utah, which is an R1 institution. So I was working primarily with PhD students in education. And I did a lot of community university school partnerships. So working with local schools and connecting and drawing upon the university resources for those partnerships. Came back to LA a number of years ago, was at Cal State LA in Chicano Studies. I was the chair of that department and then associate dean of the College of Ethnic Studies. My scholarship has always bridged education and ethnic studies, Chicano Chicano studies specifically. And then, like Cindy said, came here almost 3 years ago, teaching in this program. And when the opportunity came up for Cindy and I to co-direct, number one, co-directing with Cindy was a real treat for me to be able to consider that. And then just where we are in this program, we have a new dean, Estela Zarate, who literally just started a few weeks ago. We have a new chair, Will Perez, who has been at the university 5-6 years, but is brand new, just started his position this summer as the chair of the department. And the doctoral program is actually housed in educational leadership and administration, what he's the chair of. So I feel like it's an important moment. Leticia had mentioned it is our 20th year anniversary of this program. And this program in social justice really was one of the first. And if you're doing homework, you're seeing social justice listed on a lot of them. What we're really in the midst of doing right now is making sure that we're walking the talk. That when we say social justice, it's not just kind of a watered down, diversity gets watered down, multiculturalism years ago got watered down. And so moving towards using language about anti-racism and equity, and how we're looking at our curriculum, what that means for our students, our faculty to really be engaged in anti-racist work, theoretically and practically in higher ed and K-12. So I will stop there.
Great. Thank you both so much. And what are your primary research interests and areas of expertise? Also, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your current or most significant research that you've done?
Great. So my areas span, it connects the K-12 with the higher ed. So because of my professional role and the work that I've done in the past and my own personal experiences, to be honest, I grew up, I am first gen, grew up in a low income area with very limited resources and limited college going culture at my school and so forth. So I pursued areas that I was deeply passionate about. I really wanted to understand it, deeply wanted to change it. So my areas span K-12, but primarily and into higher ed, but primarily that pathway, right? The college access piece of how schools and educators impact the college going for first gen, low income students from racial and ethnic minoritized backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds. And then more recently, I've done more things related to higher ed, and particularly so once they're there, what's happening to these students? How are we supporting them? How are they finishing? So not just receiving them, but what's happening with them. So I do a lot of work now with higher education institutions, in particular community college systems. So areas where our students are going, or I say our in terms of first gen students from underrepresented backgrounds. So community college systems, minority serving institutions, particularly Hispanic serving institutions, and ANAPISIs, which are Asian American Pacific Islander serving institutions, and seeing what's happening there. I'm looking right now at a cluster of minority serving institutions and in the ways that they're supporting the civic development of students. So right now it's an interesting time politically, right? We're going up into elections. And so what's happening with students there? How are they being supported, especially in the students from minoritized backgrounds, and being supported in terms of their civic engagement, like students who want to engage in protests, for example, how are they supported? What are those conversations in the classroom and so forth? So that's kind of my area. I've done work on related to undocumented students, related to Mexican Indigenous and Native American students. So all kinds of different populations that are typically underrepresented in certain sectors of higher education and so forth. So that's my area.
Okay. Cindy and I bridge in a couple of areas. So I have done the K-16 work. And so one of my longitudinal projects and one of my books focuses on is looking at that pathway K through 16. So what happens when you create high expectations, college going expectations of culture in an elementary school, starting with kindergartners in Spanish dual immersion and moving forward into working with students of color. And so I think that was a 10+ year longitudinal project that really brought together a lot of my work. I mentioned ethnic studies and education have been a bridge area for me, but also looking at activism. One of my recent projects at Cal State LA was actually working with graduate students to collect oral histories of women who were a part of a group called Old Timers of Southern California. It's a group of folks who formerly incarcerated, former gang members who are now elders that are outside of what we think about as educational leaders, doing amazing work with young people, advocacy work, activist work. And so collecting their oral histories and creating an archive at Cal State LA to actually house that. So that's a couple of my research projects, but I do a lot of work around methodology. Last year I taught the qual methods class. I won't be teaching it this coming fall, but so really working with a collection of scholars to develop Chicana, Latina, Feminista methodologies. Pláticas as methodologies, informal conversations as a research methodology, testimonials, what does it mean to tap into one's cultural intuition and doing research in our communities. And so I've done a lot of the methodological, which is, I'm kind of a qualitative nerd, and then also the empirical doing work with communities. I think those are kind of my two big areas.
Wonderful, thank you. And then last question from me before I open it up for our guests to ask questions. What drives your passion for education, teaching, and mentorship?
I think that's a great question. I think I think that's something that Dolores and I think about a lot, and it drives, like, these passions are what drives not only, I mean, you could probably hear it in the type of research we do. I shared a little bit that's, you know, part of my drive for even pursuing the types of topics I'm interested in, but I'll share a little bit more. So aside from, you know, telling you how I grew up, so I did, being first gen, I think really influenced how I navigated school, how I experienced school. And I think for me, when I first came into even wanting to pursue research is, to be honest, I was kind of angry, like, learning what was happening. At first, when you grow up in a poor area that everybody else experiencing something similar, I didn't think nothing different of it. Like, I was, oh, okay, everybody's just going through this. But then when I started getting into college and I saw the difference, like then in college, even though I went to my local 4-year college, you see the differences, right? Where I met somebody whose parents bought them a house just to go to school nearby, and very different experience that I was having as a first gener going to school full time. Well, I think at one point I had like 6 jobs that I was trying to navigate because I was also trying to support my parents. And so it just was a very different experience. I didn't get to engage in research as an undergrad until later on, once I learned how, and once I found somebody who gave me that opportunity. But yeah, I started off with like seeing that there was differences in how folks were experiencing school and opportunities, and wanting to change it. And so that continues my passion and desires to want to do research and use research to do something about that. And so, yeah, so that's what sparked my interest. And I specifically, that's why I mentioned, like, looking at educators, like, how are educators being trained, and then what are they doing to support students and educators. When I say educators, I speak very broadly. So like the teachers in the classroom, the faculty that are in the classroom, the administrators, but also it's like the folks that are, you know, helping us maintain our schools to look nice, right? Like they're educators too. We interact with them, the folks at the lunch line, like all those folks are educators. And so yes, that's what drives my interest. I just want to change things. I want to make it better for folks, to put it very simply. So yeah, that's my area.
Yeah. Cindy and I, again, share some similarities, and then there's some stark differences. So I'm also first-gen college student, and so that definitely has shaped and influenced my trajectory in getting to where I am here in the work I do. But I'm, depending on how you count, fourth generation in the US, so I don't have a recent immigrant background. Being in the US for a long time, the school to prison pipeline has actually impacted my family very, very directly. And so that school to prison pipeline and seeing that as a young person, I mentioned working with a national Latino civil rights organization. That work was in the field of education, but focused more on community-based organizations, community kind of interventions in Latinx communities. And so that worked, and then teaching elementary school really shaped how I understood, how I saw, how I understood the inequities that were ever present in my own family, and then in all the communities that I worked in. So I think that passion to create change, to want something different. I'm a mother of three sons and wanted something different for them, and who they went to school with. So my children went to a school that was Spanish dual immersion, but predominantly immigrant community. And so the other parents didn't have the same kind of resources that my husband and I had. And so what did it mean to hold a PhD in an immigrant community where your children have a advantage? My kids went to college, or second gen, but the kids they were growing up with weren't. And so what did that mean in terms of the kind of work I did, the kind of advocacy I did, of not being able to keep my mouth shut because I don't have that luxury if I'm advocating for others, not just my own children. And so definitely all of that kind of shaped the direction that I've gone in my research.
Thank you both so much. All right. Now I would like to open up the floor for you all to see if you have any questions for our program co-directors. Sure, Elliot.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a very logistical question. It's not very inspiring, but I have a young baby at home. Can you share with us the hours of the classes and when they meet? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So most of our classes, most of the folks in the program are working professionals. So our classes are in the evening, 5 to 7, 5 to 7, 7 to 9. We have 2 time slots. Usually right now, those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We are online, but there is a good amount of synchronous work. And so depending on the professor, I teach one class where the first half of the semester we meet every single week, and then the latter half, because I incorporate group projects, we meet every other week, and on the off weeks you're setting up times to meet with your group. And then another class that I teach, we start the semester off pretty much doing synchronous, asynchronous, almost every other week. So it just depends on the professor, what the content is, who the professor is, but pretty much Tuesday, Thursday evenings.
Great, thank you. We have another question. Let's do Nikki.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
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 Wonderful. I currently work in higher education, working at a community college. Can you share a little bit about how the program would help support a higher ed administrator working in a California community college? Are there faculty or are there courses that have emphasis on working at a 2-year, 4-year college university?
Yes. Well, you met me. So I do research in that area. But I think, I mean, there's also the other faculty that has done work with community colleges and knows it well is William Perez, Dr. William, who's now the chair of EDLA. And in terms of scholarly expertise, that's that. But I would say that also other folks have had experience with that. Like I would say like Dolores also has experience with the community college system, or folks that have supported students in that sector who want to pursue research in that sector as well. And I would say because a lot of our students who are in the who are coming from the higher education sector actually do come from the community college system. And so you do also have other faculty who may not have that expertise, but have the sensibilities and who understand it and want to support it. And so I think you have that. We don't have a specific, at this moment, we don't have a specific class on community colleges for the doctoral program. We do have it in the higher education program. I'm also the director of the Masters in Higher Ed program. We do have a class, and actually will, because of my role, I haven't taught it, but Will Perez has been teaching that class for us in the Masters in Higher Ed program. But then I would also add that in your classes, there is, the faculty are try to incorporate literature that covers different areas of higher education, K-12 and higher education, but within higher education, trying to look at the different sectors, public, private, community college, 4-year, etc. So I think there is that. In terms of, I would add the other layer too, is that I think students are supported in terms of and encouraged to pursue topics of final research papers that are of interest to you that would align with an area that you would want to study. And so that's another opportunity to explore more deeply the community college sector in that realm as well. So I hope I answered your question, but let me know if you have other questions about that.
No, you did. Thank you so much for elaborating. And then another follow-up question is related to the dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I read in the materials that the dissertation process really starts. I almost want to say day one, with the courses. Can someone maybe elaborate on that?
I can elaborate on that. I guess you'd say it starts day one, just in the sense of being exposed to the literature, reading, taking a qual methods class that's beginning to talk about methodologies. And the way we've developed courses is to move you towards that. You're not starting the dissertation. So there might be a class that you do a literature review in. Well, literature review is part of the dissertation process. The qualitative methods will have maybe a group project where you do some kind of small project together to do research and collect some data and analyze. You would be doing that in the dissertation. So that's kind of the sense in preparing from day one. You don't have to know your topic at day one or day two. The dissertation process starts with what Leticia said we call the DRC, Dissertation Research Communities. And that starts exactly in the middle of the program. And it is a fall, spring, summer, and the following fall, where you work with a group of 5 to 6 students and your dissertation chair to get those chapter 1, 2, 3 for a proposal, defend that, help you get moving for your data collection, analyze the write-up, working in a group through that entire process. And that starts again once you reach the halfway point of the program.
I'll add though that I would encourage you, that is one of the questions in your personal statement that you will have to submit for admissions, asks you, what are some of your research interests? So while we don't expect you to be an expert, most likely you're an expert as a practitioner, as somebody who's done, been professionally in that sector or whatever areas you've been in education. We do value that expertise. You are an expert in that area. But in terms of scholarship, like, oh, how has it been studied? Like, we don't expect you to know that. But we do encourage you to start thinking about, well, what would I want to study? It is a short program and we want you to finish in those 3 years. We don't want you to be here forever. And because you could go on a rabbit hole, continue to ask these questions about the research, etc. We don't want you to have to do that. I mean, if you wanted to, it is your education, but we don't want you to have to do that. So I do encourage you, if you have something that something that seems to be of interest to you, something that you've been noticing that's a problem that maybe you would like to learn more about. Like, I would say even in the preparation for your application materials, like do a quick search, like what's out there. Like if I insert these keywords, like, what kind of research is out there, just to help you kind of narrow in. Do you have to have a research specific question? No, because your faculty through the DRCs, you'll formulate those together, and as well as your committee. To add to your last question too, that's another area of support that you do form, aside from your DRC, your chair of your dissertation, you do bring in to other folks that form your committee. And sometimes, at least in the committees I've been a part of, oftentimes one of those three are an outside person who they have to have a doctorate. That's one of the requirements. But you may find somebody that's in the community college sector. Maybe it's a colleague who has a degree, or a supervisor or something that has a doctorate degree who could serve as a committee member. That's and I'll say though that's in consultation with your chair. Your DRC chair, your dissertation chair will talk to you about, like, how you formulate this committee, what to think about in terms of who you're bringing on as part of your team. But yeah, I would say that while you don't have to have a specific question, do try to think about, well, what would I be interested in? And we do get those questions a lot. Well, like, what do I put? I'm interested in first gen stuff, and for example, and the community college. Well, what about it? Like, what is it that you're interested in? Because that also helps us think through, how are we going to support you? We do want to make sure that we provide all the resources and et cetera. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great information. Thank you. Another question from Genesis.
Hi, everyone. So I have a question about, like, how is community created amongst a cohort in an online program? I think community is really important. Like, I know for me specifically, and I think for a lot of folks undergoing an additional program. So how is community created? And then I have one more question after that.
I have been incredibly impressed with how we as faculty, but honestly, how the students have created community on a completely online program. Again, part of that is you're online, but we do an awful lot of synchronous. So you're not just out there doing modules all by yourself. I think what has happened is faculty have worked really hard to create interaction during those times we are synchronous, to work with groups, partners. I know in the qual methods, I do a group project, so people meet differently. By the time students get to the DRC, again, that's halfway through when you're going to be in a group of 5 or 6, the students I work with, they are on a chat that's just the 6 of them. They communicate regularly in addition to communicating with me. We Zoom regularly. It again, I think it has to do with the pedagogy of the faculty, but I also think the students who come in, who we initiate that, and then students are coming together wanting that kind of support to do this kind of serious doctoral level scholarship as practitioners, wanting that community. It's no doctoral program should be something that you are on your own and doing in isolation.
And the pedagogy too is not just the way it's structured and with the type of ways that the class is taught, but even in the curriculum, that's what transpires, because you're talking about very tough subjects, right? Like equity, diversity, racism, all these types of things, right? And so you end up learning about each other. The classes are fairly small compared to what I know of other places too, right? So you have 12 to 15 students in a class. So you really get to know your colleagues, you get to know the faculty member. Faculty are also very accessible. Everybody values teaching, which is great. They're great researchers, but also great teachers. I mean, a lot of the students get that one-on-one supports. And so all that, I think, contributes to that building of culture, which I think, yeah, I was also, same with Dolores, I'm on that same page too, where I was pretty impressed of like, wow, okay, this is this is amazing. Like some online programs are very asynchronous. You don't meet folks and so forth. So, so yes, I think we value that. We know that also helps you in your success. And I think because of that level, at that level, like this is part of your network too, right? So we also think it's important that you are meeting your colleagues, because we should be talking across sectors, K-12, higher ed, but then you might also find colleagues in other schools that are working in similar types of schools that might work together and so forth. So yeah, so we value those things and try to encourage that from you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. And my second question is also, I think we all understand that just as like how the students that we work with are holistic and school is not just their life, obviously like the folks in these programs are also holistic. In what ways does the program work to support their students holistically, even while understanding that this is, it is going to take up a good chunk of our lives, but acknowledging that life outside of this doesn't stop.
I think we have developed the curriculum knowing that folks are all working professionals, assuming with family, some kind of family, whether it's parents you're taking care of, brothers and sisters you're taking care of, or your own children. And so that's how the structure is developed. We also know that life happens, and maybe we've all gotten better post-COVID about giving grace. And so what I have seen throughout this program is faculty who are working with, when life happens to students in terms of flexibility, timelines. Clearly, in any 3-year EDD program, there is a structure to stay on 3 years. But again, life happens. And so how faculty work with students to make sure there is that kind of flexibility for when that does happen is absolutely there, on top of really developing a program that knowing that folks are working professionals with families. And again, maybe all of us have hopefully are offering more grace in academia and K-12 schools post-COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Heidi.
Hi, sorry, my camera's not on. I dropped my computer and messed it up. Anyways, the recommendations that you're requesting in part of the application process, I do remember you mentioning something about an employer and another one. Does it have to be from an employer, one of them? Or can it be like just like a really close family friend and maybe a colleague or something like that?
It does not have to be an employer. One is really, it's very, very helpful if you have one that's coming from a professor, an academic, something like that, but it could absolutely be a colleague, a professional colleague. You want to steer away from family member or a close friend who can speak to what is the wonderful person you are and your ethics and morals, but professionally, who can speak to you as an educational leader, as a professional, and then if possible, a professor who can speak to who you are as a learner, as a student, as an academic. And sometimes professional folks can talk to that too, right? Can see you as both a leader, but also as somebody who's always learning. And so you want to think about it in that way versus somebody who's close to you, who can really speak to what a wonderful person you are, but can't speak to the kind of examples of you as a professional in the workplace or as a learner, as a student.
Great. And one other question, kind of going back to the last question you answered, approximately how many hours do you spend a week on like assignments and work and stuff? I mean, I know you kind of pace yourself a bit, but kind of baseline of what is expected per the professors.
Well, each class is 2 to 3 units per class. And this is across this typically across the board at other places too. There's usually an expectation that for every hour which is for every credit hour, you spend 2 to 3 hours outside or in combination of class time versus class assignments. But that's in combination. So, and also keep in mind that there's different times, there's going to be different times throughout your journey that there's going to be more or less asked of you, whether it's in class or work independently, right? So like, for example, the dissertation work, there's going to be a class with it, but you might need to spend a little bit more time on your own, like thinking through some of your research areas of interest or so forth. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, so the first year you're taking so it's 2 classes per semester in the regular academic year. Though the first year there are 3 units each. And then it starts changing as you're going through the program to offset some of the time that you have to spend on your dissertation. So for example, the DRC courses, those are 2 unit classes, but we know that you're probably going to spend some extra time on your own. But again, we're trying to be mindful of like you're not taking core classes, for example, during that time too, so that you could spend time on your dissertation writing, once you get to that final year. So yeah, so we try to be mindful of those things. So all to say, it is, you will be spending time. It's not going to look the same every week. Like sometimes as you're nearing finals, I mean, you all, did your undergrad, like similar patterns, right? So there's as you're nearing big papers, you're going to be spending more time outside of class doing those final projects, final weeks of classes too. So there is those kinds of waves. So you do have to, I would encourage you to think about like pacing yourself and like thinking about your commitments outside of class and really making sure that everybody's a part of your team, like your supervisors, colleagues, or family know, like, that you guys are all part of this team. At the beginning of the semester, you get your syllabi and, start mapping out what your schedule is going to look like. And then making sure that you're incorporating that time for meeting those assignment expectations, etc. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Oh, Ron. Hi,
Good
Ron.
afternoon. Hi, how are you? Question for the director. So looking at this program, I guess what I'm struggling with is I'm trying to learn more and more about the meaning of social justice, right? I see a lot of education type doctoral programs, and I don't come across I haven't seen much of, where they've actually added social justice to that. And been trying to read up on that. I guess, how do you explain, it's kind of tough to say. So we all come from all different sorts of backgrounds, right? Here, I mean, I'm looking at everyone here. Everyone is from like a different place and a different group. And we talk about social justice. How do we get into social justice and learn about social justice, and how does it bring people together, like for a common, like as a common cause, without perhaps marginalizing a specific group? Okay, so I understand that there's some benefits for folks, especially those, in underserved communities, so I guess that's my question. I'm still kind of struggling with that. How do we come together here? We go to school, we learn with each other, we talk about social justice, but how do we actually make sure or warrant that the discussions aren't we're not marginalizing anyone in particular or any group in particular? Does that make sense?
Dolores, you want to, I'll turn over to Dolores because she's the one teaching some of these classes, and I yeah.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things is we align what we're doing with the mission of the university, which is a Jesuit social justice mission, with the idea that that does bring people together to create equity, to combat racism, to combat all kinds of isms. So that's the starting point. Is I think there's some programs, EDD programs, that have social justice in them. They're not necessarily in an institution and a college. So the School of Education within LMU specifically has a mission and articulates. I think we have 5 kind of bullet points in terms of how we define what that means. And so the whole idea is that when you're doing equity, diversity, justice, anti-racist work, it is about coming together. And so I think through the readings, through the class discussions, through the mission of the university, what I have seen in the short time that I've been here, that it really does bring people together. The intro course, that's the Introduction to Ed Leadership course that is taught in January with the incoming class. We start that class off talking about settler colonialism as a backdrop to understand where we're at with education today. And so making sure that we're giving historical, social, political context and moving to practical implications for what that means for young people today in educational settings.
And I think through that process, you know, different people have different lenses that they're coming from. That is not just their own personal experience, but the things that they've got to witness, etc. That, you know, you might be, one person may be really in, like, the ultimate bringing us together is the value and the pursuit of justice, right? But then which path, like, there's no one person that may cover everything, right? So your lens may be looking at it from disabilities lens, like what is happening for folks who are coming from different abilities or different divergent thinking, for example, and how they're experiencing school. Well, your colleague in the class, you know, that's not their area of research, but as you are, you know, exploring that area in scholarship and bringing in your practitioner or your own personal experience through that lens, they're also learning from that. So it also expands their knowledge, their notions of justice, and maybe seeing it differently, and may apply things that they're learning from you. So I think that's why it's really important that we're learning from each other. You're learning from the curriculum, yes. The faculty try to bring in different perspectives, different areas of who, like justice for who, right? Like that's one of the things that you have to think through. But justice for one doesn't mean injustice necessarily for another underserved group. There is also the cases that maybe in scholarship we haven't understood what's unjust for some groups. And so maybe you're bringing in that perspective too, and we learn from you in that way too, right? There is certain groups that they're not in the literature, right? We don't know enough about what's going on, or maybe we know enough about what's going on with one group, but not an area of it. Like maybe, for example, yeah, there's a lot of literature on Latinos or Latina folks, but maybe we don't know enough about their experience, like different able-bodied folks who are Latino or et cetera. So there might be different extra sections of it that you might be exploring it. And we all learn from it with each other. But yeah, ultimately we are a social justice program. Like that's why we say it in the name. So at the core, it's that we're all coming together with this in mind. And what are some kind of like and knowing that it's imperfect too, right? So even when we're talking about and learning about justice, there's never like zero injustice, right? There's always going to be something as we're evolving and learning how to work with and support different groups. Yeah.
So I guess so what I'm hearing is I like knowing that you can look at it from a different lens. I thought that was good. And so there is no wrong way to look at social justice, right? It can be, as you said, something that could be economically an injustice there, or perhaps physically, like, with disability, or maybe I don't know, incarceration, maybe something like that. Could be
Yeah, all kinds of things.
more
Mhm.
so than more so, or maybe equal, or I don't want to say more so, but I mean, there's more than one way to look at it. And if you come up with those lens, you can be just as successful in this program, right? I mean, I'm hoping that's the case, anyways.
Think of a program, the doctoral program, as you're going to learn different things. You might learn injustices for Latinx folks, for example. Well, something that you might be learning about either how it's studied or what's been happening, it like thinking it through and thinking about how we may study it and then how it works in practice may apply to other groups too. They're like, for example, I do a lot of work with Hispanic serving institutions and ANAPEZs because there's issues that come into play that are similar, right? Language issues, for example, in terms of how schools are serving different folks from different backgrounds. Undocumented student issues impact Latinx, impact other groups too. I'm not saying that there is no like there's undocumented folks from Europe. There's undocumented folks who are Black. But I look at it through those experiences to try to figure out like what can we do about it, and in that other folks also benefit, right? We all benefit from supporting different groups.
Right, we have just a few more minutes, but I do see Steve and Valeria with their hands up.
This can be a quick question, and I really appreciate the responses to social justice. I feel like many of us are, at least for me, I'm looking into this program for social justice, but in particular, the anti-racist portion, which we're not seeing in other programs, or I'm not seeing with other programs, and really need to move forward in that way. And like, I want to be mindful of Steve, who also has a question. Can you just share like an example of ways that you engage us to like critically think about anti-racist work academically, but also practically in our work for those of us who are working, in institutions and with inequity spaces?
I'm going to try to talk real quick so Steve gets his question in. One of the students I'm working with right now is using critical race theory to look at alumni of a program she used to teach in. It's a high school, and within that high school, there was a social justice program. And because of the pushback to CRT is divisive, or we bring in Black history and that's divisive and we shouldn't teach it, these kinds of things, she wants to look at what do alumni of all races say, graduates from this social justice program, and how can critical race theory as a theoretical lens help me understand what they say about coming out of being a graduate of this program. Her hope is, and actually she's collected data, she's in the middle of analysis, is she's finding the ways and positive ways that they talk about how it impacted their lives to be able to be in different kinds of spaces and interact. So that would be research, but also practical as a former teacher of this social justice program, and very timely in a time where we have people saying teaching Black history is like an anti-racist, or we shouldn't be doing it, things like that. So that was a quick one.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Well, I was trying to think of a cool question, but I think what I really wanted to say is I'm really appreciative of you sharing your life histories as well. I felt like we were in a community meeting and forgot we were in an informational session, and so I just wanted to relay that the heartbeat of the program at university definitely came through, and in particular, even Dolores, you're sharing about lived experience, folks who've been formerly incarcerated. I think, and Dr. Cynthia as well, your life history, I think as a person coming and listening, as a community member, it does resonate strong, and I really did feel proud to be in this session with you all. But so my question, I guess, is one, for the courses, are they mostly comprised of papers? Are they also exams or like tests and quizzes? And then the other quick thing is, what does the alumni community look like for folks who graduate? Thank you.
I'll answer the first one. No, not really tests, quizzes. It is paper-based or project-based. So paper-based, doing a lit review on something that it relates to your interest, to, again, get you moving to thinking about that dissertation down the line. Project-based, again, my students in the qual methods, a group of 4 students work together to define what would be a research question we could do, and could we interview, somebody was looking at teachers' workloads, and so they ended up going to do a couple of interviews and then analyzing. So project-based or paper-based for the most part.
And your second question was related to alumni and community after, right? Like the continuing connection. I think that, well, one is folks, because of the community that's built during the program, many folks continue engaging with the program, with each other, with their colleagues. And Michaela is actually joining us right now. She's assistant director of the program, and she's been with the program for much longer than us, so she could probably speak more to that. So one is just, I think by design, folks connect and stay connected. But 2, there's also structural things that are in place to keep you connected. So there is an alumni group and there is somebody who's leading. There's an alumni that's typically leading this, and I'm sorry, I've just joined June 1, so I still don't know all the things, and I have not met the leaders for the alumni group quite yet. But I know that they do connect, they do engage. And then second, and I'll let Michaela also share a little bit more because she'll know more than me. But the other thing that LMU is also tries to stay connected with you, as must other schools. I mean, we all get these emails, but I think LMU really tries to keep you connected, and they have alumni events. You still have access to some of the resources even after you finish. So the Career Center is great. Like, they'll continue meeting with you. You have hours with them as an alumni as you're navigating your professional roles, etc. You also have that resource. But I'll turn it over to Michaela because she could probably say more about that.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, so, as Cindy mentioned, LMU really does like to keep the alumni engaged. The School of Education does have an alumni association, and actually the chair of the association is a doctoral alumni. So they put on events throughout the year, send out communications. And then for the doctoral program, we have a newsletter that we send out to all of our current students and alumni to help keep you connected. And we encourage you to send in live updates, promotions, that kind of stuff. I can say personally that the alumni network is very strong, and cohorts stay connected even after they graduate. They still keep with their group chats and texts, and they still meet up. And I frequently get emails from alums who are looking for open jobs at their work site, and their first thought is always to try to fill a position with a doctoral graduate. So that's a really great resource, like right off the bat for your networking if you're looking for career advancement. And I think it's one of those things where the doctoral journey can feel kind of isolating. And to be able to share it with those who actually understand it, you create really strong bonds. And as I was saying, those can continue and stay with you even after the program is over.
And I think another reason that folks stay connected, what Michaela just said about isolating, in a doctoral program, is once you've gone through this kind of deep equity, anti-racist work, as we all know, we often find ourselves, whether it's K-12 higher ed or even in community settings, where we're the only ones thinking this deeply. And so having your allies of your support network of, you might be in different schools, different districts, maybe in higher ed, K-12 community, but you can kind of come back and just, check in, via text or whatever it is. I think that's another reason why this doctoral program alumni stay so closely connected.
And thank you all so much for joining. We really appreciate you being here tonight to meet our program co-directors. If you have any other questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out to us via email. Thank you all so much, and we hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.